Japanese battleship Yamato. Welcome to another interesting video from War Secrets. These days, ships are mostly used to transport cargo or people, and in the past, ships were very widely used in wars and they look much bigger and scarier. So in this video, we will discuss about the most awe-inspiring warship in the world history, the battleship Yamato. Before we begin, we would like to ask you to subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon to never miss an update on our future videos from War Secrets. Now, let's dive in. The Imperial Japanese Navy is known for unleashing some rather unsettling creations during World War II maritime conflict. Yet, while bigger is better is admittedly associated with American military might and engineering achievements, it is less well known that shipbuilders in Japan went about creating some of the most impossibly massive and terrifying battleships the world has ever seen. The Yamato-class ships consisted of the namesake Yamato herself and her sister ship, the Musashi. The Yamato class represented an enormous investment of battle in terms of materials, personnel, fuel, and armament in just 2 ships. These machines were the largest warships of all to be deployed during the Second World War. History. The Washington Treaty of 1922, with its prohibition on building of new battleships, held back Japanese projects for the development of the fleet, which comprised a building of 8 modern battle cruisers and 8 modern battleships. The Japanese designers and engineers wished to build new high-quality units. They considered the US Navy a potential opponent and wanted to ensure that their ship would be stronger and better armed than US ships. Despite treaty prohibitions, the Bureau of Naval Construction carried on with their studies about the building of battleships, and in 1930, they reached a new phase of development. In 1934, Japan withdrew from the League of Nations, renouncing its treaty obligations. In October 1934, the Bureau of Naval Construction received from the Naval General Staff the order to produce a design study of a new battleship with 46 cm guns and a speed of 30 knots. The vessels of the Yamato class were designed to be capable of engaging multiple enemy battleships at the same time. Design. Boats, planes, and other equipment were placed in protected warehouse and hangars to protect them from being damaged by the terrific blast of the 46 cm guns. In fact, the blast pressure of this weapon was capable of destroying boats or tearing the clothing from the crew and making them unconscious. So ventilation openings were placed in a strategic way to reduce or avoid the effect of the blast. Yamato had a length of 256 meters between perpendiculars and 263 meters overall. She had a beam of 38.9 meters and a draft of 11 meters at deep load. She displaced 64,000 long tons at a standard load and about 72,000 tons at deep load. Her crew consisted of 2,500 to 2,800 officers and men. However, in the last battle, it consisted of 3,332. She had 4 sets of camp-on geared steam turbines, each of which drove 1 propeller shaft. The turbines were designed to produce a total of 150,000 shot horsepower, using steam provided by 12 Campen water tube boilers to give her maximum speed of 27 knots. She had a storage capacity of 6,300 long tons of fuel oil, giving her a range of 7,200 nautical miles at a speed of 16 knots. Armor. The ship's steel armor weighed 23,000 tons, more than 30% of Yamato's total weight. The Imperial Navy developed new ways to harden steel and otherwise improve armor technology for the ship. Plates of armor 25 inches thick, the heaviest armor ever mounted on a warship, shielded the turrets of her main guns. The side of the ship could survive the impact of 3,000-pound armor-piercing projectiles like those shots from the ship's big guns. But Yamato's bow and stern were not as well protected. Most of the torpedoes that ultimately sank the ship struck there, below the waterline, where she was most vulnerable. Living conditions. Yamato had a reputation as the most comfortable ship in the Japanese Navy. For part of the war, she was the Navy's flagship and home of the highest naval commanders who were catered to. But even low-ranking sailors fared well, eating white rice rather than barley because Yamato spends many months in port. She was the first Japanese warship equipped with air conditioning, although it didn't cool all living quarters. There was also relative elbow room for her crew of 2,800 men, 10 square feet of living space per man, compared to only 3 to 4 square feet on Japanese destroyers. Yamatos End. Unfortunately for Yamato and its crew, it was obsolete by the time it was launched in 1941. The ability of fast aircraft carriers to engage enemy ships at a range of their embarked dive and torpedo bombers meant a carrier could attack a battleship at ranges of 200 miles or more long before it entered the range of a battleship's guns. Battleships were outsticked, to use a modern term. By early 1945, Japan's strategic situation was grim. Japanese conquest in the Pacific had been steadily rolled back since the Allied landings on Guadalcanal in August 1942. The Philippines, Solomons, Gilberts, and Carolines had all been lost, and the enemy was now literally at the gates. Okinawa, the largest island in the Ryukyu island chain, was the last bastion before the home islands itself. The island was just 160 miles from the mainland city of Kogushima, coincidentally the birthplace of the Imperial Japanese Navy. The invasion of Okinawa began in April 1, 1945. In response, the Japanese Navy activated Operation Tango. Yamato, escorted by the cruiser Yahagi commanded by the famous Tamechi Hara, and 8 destroyers, would sail to Okinawa and disrupt the Allied invasion force. Yamato would then beach, becoming coastal artillery. It was a humiliating end for a battleship capable of 27 knots, but the lack of fuel and other military resources made for truly desperate times. Yamato and its task force, designated the Surface Special Attack Force, departed Tokoyama, Japan on April 6, proceeding due south to transit the Bunga Strait. American forces had already been alerted to the Tango operation, thanks to cracked Japanese military codes, and 2 American submarines were waiting to intercept the flotilla. Yamato and its escorts were duly observed by the submarines, but the subs were unable to attack due to the task force's high rate of speed in zigzagging tactics. The sighting report was pushed up the chain of command. Allied naval forces in and around Okinawa were the obvious target, and the massive fleet braced itself accordingly. 6 older battleships from the Gunfire and Covering Support Group, or Task Force 54, under Rear Admiral Morton Dio, prepared to defend the invasion force but were pulled away in favor of an air attack. At 0800 hours on April 7, scout planes from Admiral Mitscher's Fast Carrier Force, or Task Force 58, located Yamato, still only halfway to Okinawa. Mitscher launched a massive strike force of 280 fighters, bombers, and torpedo planes, and the fight was on. For 2 hours, the Surface Special Attack Force was subjected to a merciless aerial bombardment. The air wing of 11 fleet carriers joined in the attack. So many planes were in the air of Yamato that the fear of mid-air collision was real. The naval aviators were in such a hurry to score the first hit on the allegedly unsinkable ship. Plans for a coordinated attack collapsed into a free-for-all. Yamato took 2 hits during this attack, 2 bombs and 1 torpedo, and air attacks claimed 2 escorting destroyers. A second aerial armada consisting of 100 aircraft pressed the attack. As the Yamato started to go down, U.S. naval aviators changed tactics. Noticing the ship was listing badly, one squadron changed its torpedo running depth from 10 feet, where it would collide with the main armor belt, to 20 feet, where it would detonate against the exposed lower hull. Aboard Yamato, the listing eventually grew to more than 20 degrees, and the captain made the difficult decision to flood the starboard outer engine room, drowning 300 men at their stations in an attempt to trim out the ship. Yamato had taken 10 torpedoes and 7 bomb hits and was hurting badly. Despite counter-flooding, the ship continued to list, and once it reached 35 degrees, the order was given to abandon ship. The captain and many of the bridge crew tied themselves to their stations and went down with their ship, while the rest attempted to escape. At 14:23, it happened. Yamato's forward internal magazines detonated in a spectacular fireball. It was like a tactical nuclear weapon going off. Later, a navigation officer on one of Japan's surviving destroyers calculated that the pillar of fire reached a height of 2,000 meters, that the mushroom-shaped cloud rose to a height of 6,000 meters. The flash from the explosion that was Yamatos End was seen as far away as Kagoshima on the Japanese mainland. The explosion also reportedly destroyed several American airplanes observing the sinking. When it was all over, the Surface Special Attack Force had been almost destroyed. Yamato, the cruiser Yahagi, and 3 destroyers were sunk. Several other escorts had been seriously damaged. Gone with a great battleship were 2,498 of its 2,700-person crew. This brings us to the end of our video. We hope you liked it. Are there any more legendary battleships you would like us to make videos about? Let us know in the comments. We'll see you in the next video. Take care. Sayonara.